Yes, hello again. This is now tarot lesson number 116. And there are two things today. One is a bit more about swords. And then I want to tell you about the Book of the Five Rings. This is basically all about how to read cards rather than looking at a particular card or combinations of cards. So it's more because the title of this series is The Tarot for Self-Education, and this 116 is kind of about how you can educate yourself when it comes to reading cards. So if you let's say you don't speak French, but if you learn 50 common words in French or any other language, you can make yourself understood. So the French verb for to eat is manger. So you could say, j'ai faim et j'ai envie de manger quelque chose. But all you need to do is touch your chest and say manger. And anybody listening to you is going to know, okay, he or she is hungry. They're going to want something to eat. What have I got to give them? But you don't need to know any of those other words. You don't need to know, I am hungry and I want something to eat, or what have you got that I can eat? That's all implied by just pointing to yourself and saying the verb manger. And that's the point. I think you can learn or you can make yourself understood in any language if you know 50 or maybe 100 common words. You just say the word and the other person understands what you mean. In the same way, we have the 4 suits, and one of the suits is swords. So you can know that a sword, it's a bit like we start with sword, and then you think around the subject, or you think around the word, because a sword is a weapon, right? You can attack or you can defend. So when a sword card comes up and you talk about it to give the answer to the question, you're not looking for meanings. You're talking around the idea maybe that there's a situation where you need to attack, or a situation where it's better to defend yourself. And so attacking can mean all sorts of different things. You undermine somebody. You say something to other people to make them appear weaker than they are. Or you can use, if you think of a sword as being defensive, you can get in touch with other people and gather them around you so that you become stronger because of your connection with other people. So we're taking the idea of attack or defense and we're expanding on it the same way that manger means I'm hungry and I want something to eat. What do you have for me? Or maybe you point to a particular thing and the person understands, okay, you're hungry, you want to eat that particular piece of pizza or whatever it happens to be. So a sword can be attack or defense, and that can be a starting point, and we just expand on it. So someone, I think it was Moonlight Dream, left a comment about how a sword or words can be a weapon as well, because you can use words to hurt people or to be cruel or to be vindictive or to be malicious, and you can insult them. So words, with the suit of swords, you may find yourself talking about what are you going to say to the person. You can, by your words, you can build them up or you can break them down. That's not particularly the 5 of Swords. It's more a sword and what it can be used for. And depending what the question is, you would talk about it a particular kind of way. So there are other things. I'm saying a sword is a weapon, but so words can be a weapon. Guilt can be a weapon, where you make people feel guilty and manipulate them into doing something for you because they don't want to feel guilty. At the same time, in the last video, I talked about swords, about the weight of a sword. It can be a claymore or a rapier or a smaller one, a dagger. And Evelyn pointed out how proximity, how close you are, can be important. If you're using a dagger, you know, you're not going to be much use if you're 10 feet away from the person. Maybe you can throw it, but you can't. You could miss and then you've got no weapon. So proximity can be important as well. So if you take the idea of proximity, then with the suit of swords, it can be that you have to get your hands dirty, that you can't delegate. You've got to do the work yourself. And maybe because you do the work yourself, you've got experience, so you know more, you know better, you can do it better next time. So if, let's say, the question's about a problem the person has with a co-worker, then with the suit of swords, the idea is you have to deal with them. It's better to confront the person or to talk to the person or express what your problem is with that person. There's no point in going to the boss and delegating the problem or delegating the responsibility and getting somebody else to solve the problem for you. If you think of if you find yourself thinking about a dagger and up close and personal. So the second part, I'm going to come back to this in a bit because I'm going to talk about a sword later, but there is a photography channel, the fellow's name, I have to read it, I can't remember it, Toshiki Yukawa. I'll put a link in the description down below. And I happened to watch a video of his a little while ago about a samurai warrior called Masashi Mamoto, who in 1645 produced a book called The Book of the Five Rings. So I think it's about, I want to tell you about what some of the ideas are in the Book of the Five Rings, because I think you'll be able to apply them to your own studies and your own ideas. And it'll also give you, I think, some basic ideas that you can develop. And it'll help you come up with meanings for cards or what a card means. So I've got things written down here. So the photography video by the photographer, he talks about the 9 rules or the 9 points made in book 1. And it's 5 scrolls, 5 rings, 5 scrolls. And there are 9 points made in the first one. And I'm going to tell you what the 9 points are. I'll put them in the description so you don't need to pause. And then I'm going to tell you what the photographer fellow did with those 9 points, because he looks at 1 and 2 and puts them together, and then 3 and 4 and puts them together. But the 9 points are for your consideration. Number 1, I have to turn it to read it. Do not think dishonestly. So that's a rule that makes a difference for us. Don't think dishonestly. So if you know that you're making something up, don't do that. Or if you know that you're leaving out important points, again, maybe don't do that. This is different for you studying on your own. With some people, with a questioner, you can't always tell them the absolute truth. Sometimes you've got to leave out important information, but for yourself, I think, do not think dishonestly. Point number 2 was practice and cultivate the path. He was a samurai warrior, and he was on a samurai path of philosophy and wisdom and so on. But it's just, the point is practice and cultivate the path. So we're looking at the tarot. So practice the tarot and cultivate the path. Develop skills that will be useful for you in your journey as a tarot reader. Point 3 was become acquainted with the arts. So I don't know, this, maybe I like this because it's the kind of thing that I've been doing anyway, where I talk about Shakespeare and poetry and music and art. There's something about, maybe because the arts take something that's real but invisible and bring it make it visible, make it something that people can talk about and recognize and deal with. And maybe that's the importance of the value of the arts. Number 4 was know the principles of various paths. So I'm not sure quite what to say about that. Number 5, understand gain and loss in everything. And that's useful. There is gain and loss in everything. And so we're meant to understand it rather than be put out or disappointed or angry or hostile because of gain or loss in something. Understand there is going to be gain and loss in everything. Number 6 was train your eye to see every detail. The tarot is all around us, or the symbolism of the tarot is everywhere. I mean, I'm looking at a video on photography and a samurai warrior from the 17th century Japan, and I'm using it for the tarot, or from my own understanding of the tarot. Perceive things which you cannot see. Maybe that's developing your intuition, real intuition. Number 8, pay attention to small things. And I'll get to that in a bit. And the last one, do nothing useless. I think that's really good. If what you're doing is useless, don't do it. And I could stop at this point, but I'm going to go on, because what the photographer fellow did was he put together points 1 and 2, and this is what is maybe more obviously useful to you in your studies. Point 1 and 2. So when you put points 1 and 2 together, there is no shortcut. You just have to train every day. So when it comes to the tarot, if you're making slow progress, then you're making slow progress. There are no shortcuts. There's no magic bullet that will suddenly make everything work. So there isn't a book that you can read that will give you the ultimate meaning of every card. And all you need to do is find that book or look at the book. That's not how it works. There are no shortcuts. You have to train yourself every day. Points 3 and 4 were about broadening your horizons. So that can be why I'm saying listen to music, read poetry, write poetry, read philosophy, read Shakespeare, and just broaden your horizons so that you've got more to say, or you've got something to say in a whole lot of different areas, which means that when somebody asks you a question about relationships, you've got something to say because you've thought about it, or you've read various people's opinions about relationships and what they're for and how to make them work, and what works in a relationship and what doesn't work. Then 5 and 6, see the essence of things. This is because, in a way, everything is made up of the same things. I think we get to that in the next point, or the next section. And 7 and 8 was making small efforts. We don't need to set aside 3 days of solid study of the tarot. What you do is, when you notice something, you write it down, or you remember it for a while and see where it leads or what other ideas are connected with it. It's small efforts that, I don't know if I mentioned it last time, but the motto about slow and steady wins the race. If you're taking a single step each day, or if you learn one thing a day, at the end of a year, you've learned 365 things, which is more than most people learn in their whole life. But small steps. And point 9 was just focus on your path. So if you're studying the tarot, you're studying the tarot. And forget about, or don't bother being controlled by other people and their opinion about what the tarot is or isn't, or what you ought to be like. Somehow we should be true to ourselves. So in the third book, or the second book, the first one is about ground. There are 5 elements in Japanese or in Buddhist philosophy, and the second one is water. And he talks in the book, or the Book of the 5 Rings, about having a mind like water, which is kind of Bruce Lee as well. But at a particular point, he says, the expression he uses is having a position without a position. And if you can live with that idea and get the hang of it, it's a bit like you can be flexible and you can relax. You've got a position, but you have a position, but you don't have a position. So when you see a card, it's as if you know what the card is about, but it's as if you're seeing it for the first time. So you're not referring back to information or ideas that you had that related to some other question. You have a position without having a position, so you can be in the moment and talk about the card. And this is now, he talks in this section on water about having a lot. Swords can be of different lengths, and some people naturally favor a long sword because it seems better and more effective, because you're at a distance from your opponent and it's bigger and sharper maybe, and you can do a lot more damage with it. So he says, the writer says, where you hold a sword depends on your relation to your opponent and the place, and must conform to the situation wherever you hold it, which is the idea of being like water, having a mind like water, where it's not the sword that controls you. You make use of the sword appropriately, given the condition and given the opponent. Because if you've got a tall and an opponent who is 3 times your size, you hold the sword one way. Whereas if your opponent is much smaller than you, you maybe don't need to hold it as aggressively or as defensively. So you have mind like water. You adapt your understanding or the meaning to the question that was asked and the card that comes up and the questioner. Because if you begin with the questioner picking 2 numbers, that gives you an idea of where they're at the moment and what they're about and what's important. Then in the light, because 2 people can ask the same question and you can get the same card. But if one person chooses 1 and 19, you know they're optimistic and confident. They're choosing the magician, they've got ideas, and they've got confidence because they picked the sun. So a card like the 6 of Batons is like upward and onward and keep going, and things are going to get even better and you're going to become a leader. Or if you want to be a leader, you can be one. Whereas if somebody chooses 9 and 16, they're the hermit, so they're more self-contained and maybe isolated from other people. And also with the tower, things are going to fall apart, or things have fallen apart. So for them, with the 6 of Batons, you're maybe saying what's important is you're going to be able to get along better with other people. With the first one, it was about being in charge and being in control and taking your plan and doing something big with it, supported by other people. With the second person, with the hermit and the tower, you're talking about this card as beginning to get along with people, or finding people you can cooperate with, and not being so isolated from other people, and not expecting disruption from relationships represented by the tower. So that's like mind like water, where your meaning or the information that you derive from the card depends to some extent on the question, the questioner, and the card itself. So that was it. Hope you enjoyed that. I know I did. One last thing, the tarot.ca is up and running, and I added a contact form and I put some videos there, and I've got a few bits and pieces to add to it, and then I will continue to keep it up to date. So have a visit, take a look, leave me a comment if you want, and see what you think of this video. Okay, bye-bye.